Hey guys, what's up? I'm Fabio from ComicsVerse, and we are at East Coast Comic Con with Ann Nocenti. All right, so the first question is one of the themes that you went over with, and your Daredevil one was the Collateral Damage caused by superheroes. What inspired you to tackle this very still controversial issue, as evident from the Civil War movie that came out last year?
Well, I think that because I didn't grow up reading superhero comics, that at some point, after you write a lot of comics, you start realizing that the narrative arc of a comic, everything has to escalate into a fight, which is fun. And I had a lot of trouble, though, sort of, I took martial arts classes. I started learning how to kickbox and box and do karate because I was like, I want to do better fight scenes. And, it's a lot of the fun and the joy of comics is this orchestrating these battles. And yet at the same time, as a kind of a person who is more of a peacemaker in life, you start saying, well, why all the stories have to escalate to usually some kind of like misunderstanding that ends up in fisticuffs.
Right.
I started wanting to explore all the angles of that. Okay, what happens? Let me have Daredevil and Bullet have a fight so that they end up smashing through a peace rally. And that way I can kind of say something about, oh, this is an escalation narrative and there's going to be a conflict, but why don't they smash through a peace rally? And then ironically in the background you can say, oh, okay. And then I started thinking, well, what happened to that little girl whose bicycle got smashed? And, did Daredevil find her and pay for it? So the general thing that superhero comics are, what makes them exciting is the same thing that makes them a little bit repetitive, So I think it all came out of trying to realistically look at the fight scene in all its wonderful and hypocritical and controversial ways. Yeah.
So you think that being out, not having an outside perspective on that made you look at these fight scenes that have always been very repetitive in comics, like from an outsider, essentially. So you when you watch this, like, wow, this is very exciting, but there's some things going on here that people aren't really considering, like the damage done here.
Yeah, and I'm sure I wasn't the first to do that. I think it's kind of become a trope even. It's probably done so much now, it's a trope.
Yeah.
That, you could probably do a whole book called Collateral Damage. Maybe they have.
I think there was. I think it was a Marvel show called Collateral Damage.
Well, you could literally follow just all the people that got screwed over from just the Hulk. So.
Like they're all like the Marvel Netflix shows, like including Daredevil. They're all exploring those things.
Yeah.
So moving over to the DC side, you wrote for Catwoman. So. How would you say your perspective, like one you gave for Daredevil, influenced your run for Catwoman, or if it did?
Well, I think with Daredevil, because I lived in New York City, and this was the '80s when Hell's Kitchen was quite a violent place with a lot of street life, and it was. I was a journalist too, so I took stories right off the street. So if you want to. I guess it was more like being a documentary filmmaker and putting real stories into the comics.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff you see in the background or things you overhear would have been stuff that I heard the night before and scribbled down, or a bar I went into and overheard a conversation. It was a lot of it was like literally out of my life.
Right.
Then years later, being asked to write Catwoman, but I had been out of comics for quite a while, doing other things, and they said, well, our idea here with this new 52 thing is to roll back time and have them be young again. And, there is always that problem with comics. How does Peter Parker stay in high school, And when Peter Parker gets married, people are kind of like, well, now that's boring, It's sort of like... Yeah, let's put him back in high school. Oh, let's make him wealthy. Oh, let's take his money away. You know, so you have to continue reinventing without violating the essence of the character. And a good character, you can stretch them to the limit and they snap back. So with Catwoman, they were like, she's young. She's not an experienced thief yet.
Okay.
She hasn't had all those stories under her belt that she has now. So, and we also don't want you really to get into her origin that much, you know? Because, I mean, people had made Catwoman a prostitute, a streetwalker. They had done all this stuff with her. So I wanted to go back to the very, like, I wanted her to do some thieving and screw up.
Okay.
So, like, you know, it was some of her first jobs. I did this story, Gotham Underground, which was all about how it was the first time she learned how to play this villain off of this villain off of this villain, because all three were more powerful than her, and she couldn't take them on.
Right.
And so she learned how to, and that's like a beginning villain move. You know what I mean? It's like, that's villainy 101.
Like just messing with people who work with it.
She was young.
Yeah.
And so she also, I had her do some thieving that backfired. She didn't get any money out of it, you know. So the idea was to go back and look at her early years as a thief before she became the kind of sly mastermind that she eventually became. So
do you have any advice to any girls out there who want to aspire to write comics?
Well, I would say that finding your own voice is very important. And one of the things, if you get into superhero comics too early, like maybe I did, going right into superhero comics, and you start writing in that formula, like I said, the escalation narrative, the fight,
Right.
the whole thing, you can forget that you also need to develop a unique voice. And so I would say, don't try and get into superhero comics right away. Do your own thing from your life, from your school adventures, from your fantasies, from, you know. And once you have a voice, then maybe move into more like formulaic stuff. But I don't know. What do I know?
You seem pretty well versed in everything right now. But well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with us. All right, guys, for more information, follow us at www.comicsverse.com. See you around.